Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson. I'm a parent coach, and I'm an adoptive mom of a loving and adventurous 19-year-old son, Joe, who is working and struggling to find his path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. We are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. Today's guest is Nicole Rademacher, a Los Angeles-based transcultural adoptee, artist, and art therapist. She uses her art to help heal her own adoption trauma, plus she helps others tackle their nonverbal and often stuffed down pain using artistic modalities. Nick is producing an extensive series of adoption-related events in the Los Angeles area that will start in November 2023. The project is called Are Not Our Cruxes. It's a series of free, hybrid, interactive, art-based healing events with an online interactive visualization that will help the participants understand adoption more deeply. So you can join in person, which is going to be in LA, or online from wherever you are. So welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Nicole. So glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. So why don't you just start with your story? Tell us about your early childhood. How old were you when you were adopted and that kind of thing?
Okay, yeah, I'll just jump right in. So I was born in 1978 and my birth mother was kicked out of her house and stayed in the hospital. I guess they had a place set up for unwed mothers to kind of have their children and work and things like that. And so I was born in the same hospital. And then I was put immediately into foster care, as far as I know. And it's funny, I was like thinking about this before coming in today. And I'm like, did I ever ask my birth mother if she held me? And I was like, you know what? I don't know. I know I haven't recently. And we've been in reunion since 2004. Okay. But I wonder if maybe at the beginning when we first met each other, I asked her. But now I kind of like tiptoe around it because I'm like, maybe that would be hurtful. Not hurtful to her, but like it would bring up some pain for her.
A bad memory for her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't really know. I've never asked those questions or don't remember the answers if I asked those questions. And I was only in foster care for basically 2.5 months. The story is we're not sure whether it was an elderly couple or just like one woman. Those details are kind of hazy. And I haven't asked again recently to kind of find that out. But the disheartening story is that when my adoptive mom came to pick me up, my nails were really, really long.
Oh, wow.
The foster mom hadn't cut my nails. And so I had a bunch of scratches around my eyes from like crying and like.
That's sad.
Yeah. So in the car, she bit off my nails.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. That's so sad because you wonder what else did she not do?
Yeah.
What else was she not paying attention to? Oh man, you were scratching yourself.
And now I have like supposedly, because I'm in reunion, like I have all this information, but then there's like still these gaps in my story. But anyway, so I was adopted into the Rademacher family. I have an older brother who's also adopted. This was in Milwaukee. We lived in Minnesota for about a year, and then we moved to North Carolina, which is where I grew up. Mm-hmm. My childhood was pretty uneventful. I think it was pretty normal. I always identified as a person who was adopted.
Okay.
And I went to Catholic school in North Carolina. So there's a lot of us who've been adopted through Catholic charities. And so I did have other classmates and peers who were adopted.
Okay.
And I had quite a bit of information, like non-identifying information about my birth parents. Like I knew that my birth mom is 5'8" and my dad was like 5'7.5" and he's Mexican. And my mom is white with German and French and Dutch ancestry. Okay. And what they were majoring in college and like things like that. So I had kind of like these fantasies, and especially with my dad being Mexican and growing up in the South, where in the 80s and 90s, there really weren't a lot of Latinos there. So there wasn't a lot of culture. And I grew up in a white family. So I was kind of exoticizing myself in a way of like trying to understand it, but not knowing where to begin. I remember in high school, there were these two boys who were brothers who were Mexican, and I kind of latched on to them to like glean any type of information.
Yeah, like some secret club.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, exactly. Wow. Since you're half Mexican and half white, Are you able to pass as white, or was it obvious in your family that you were a different race?
As far as race, I pass as white.
Okay.
I would like to think that when I'm around other Latin Americans, I blend in. But growing up, I got a lot of people asking me if I was Greek.
Yeah, you do look Greek.
My skin isn't like really olive, but it's got a yellow undertone.
Uh-huh.
But my white adoptive family, they're pretty Nordic. They're like large bones, really tall.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really look like them. And I remember one time, I don't know if it was like JCPenney or Kohl's or something like that, but I was there with my mom and I said, like, I called out to her. I was like, Mom, I don't know, I need something, or I'm going to try something on. I can't remember what it was. And this woman like took a double take and just like stared at us. So it's not the same as being a transracial adoptee, but I didn't fit in visually with my adoptive family.
I'm just curious why you don't identify as a transracial adoptee.
Well, I think, I present and pass as white.
Okay.
And my understanding is it's a different experience than the experience I have.
Okay. So being biracial.
Also, now meeting my birth father,
mm-hmm.
he's a light-skinned Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to usurp somebody else's experience or identity.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
But it's complicated. I often check other on the race question for like demographics and stuff like that, because I'm like confused.
What are you supposed to put? Yeah. Luckily, there's usually an other now, right?
Yeah.
Are there usually places for you to check the box?
I like it, even though Latinx isn't an actual race. I like it when they accidentally put Latinx in a race, because then I just check that and I don't have to do anything else.
Okay. So that's how you identify if people ask you Latinx?
Yeah.
Very good. Oh my gosh. That's very complicated. Being biracial into an adopted white family. That's several extra layers there of interesting complexities, right?
Yeah, and it was different in the 80s and 90s than it is now with adoptees that are from a different culture, different ethnicity. Mm-hmm. Even with, as a therapist, working with adoptive families, we talk a lot about embracing your child's culture. Okay. And, my parents didn't have that information. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the way it was taught then.
Yep. So hopefully becoming more common now.
Yeah.
But I know there's still a lot of white parents that aren't clued in, but I think we're trying to get better.
Yeah. I guess when I was a kid, I wasn't really looking at other adoptive families and what they were doing. And now, it's part of my job. But I feel that there's a lot more effort, a lot more kind of recognition of developmental trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting there. There's a lot more opportunities to glean information, podcasts and webinars and online courses. And this Zooming that kind of blew up because of COVID has given us lots of opportunities to learn from actual living type people like yourself, and not just reading books and stuff. But I hope that people continue to work on that, especially white adoptive parents. If you have a transracial kid or a biracial kid or any kid that doesn't quite fit into your mold, which nobody will ever do. So I think that's really important that we work as hard as we can to try to do the best we can with that. So I know it's kind of fraught.
Yeah. And just be supportive of what your adoptee wants to do. Mm-hmm. Like, what are they interested in? Are they interested in knowing more about their birth culture? Are they interested in visiting their birth country if they're inter-country adoptee?
Okay. Yeah.
Letting them guide you.
And if they say, no, Mom, I don't want to. And then you say, okay, no problem, right? You just let them guide the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. And what were your parents like? You said you had a good childhood. Were they really supportive? Maybe they were a little naive, maybe about the race piece, or uneducated, but are you okay with your parents, or what part would you like to talk about?
Yeah. I'm pretty fortunate in that I have a pretty good relationship with both my adoptive parents and my birth parents.
That's great.
It's been a struggle, especially now that we've been in reunion for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I bet that kind of shifts around.
Yeah, we've all put in a lot of work, including my brothers. So in 2004, when I reunited with them, I found out that they had married 2 years after I was born.
Oh, they married each other. Wow.
So I have two full younger brothers. One is 6 years younger. One is 11 years younger.
Wow. That's really unique. That doesn't happen very often.
That's what I thought. But
Do you run into people?
I don't know. Maybe there are other people.
Okay. You're seeing them like when you say, I never see Volkswagens, and then you see all of them all over the place.
I think so. I think it's like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what kind of feelings did that come up when you found your birth parents and found out they married each other and had kids? were you like, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
How come you couldn't have done that with me?
To put it lightly, it was what the heck?
What the heck? Yeah. Probably a few more words than that.
Yeah. Like, why was I the one that wasn't kept? Why was I the one that you relinquished? And there's a lot of adoptees that have suffered a lot of trauma in their adoptive families and know that their mothers were coerced, or that there's a lot of just not right things that went on with their adoption. And so I want to believe that my mom was coerced. Like, why else would she relinquish me? But I've had that tough conversation with my birth mother, and she was 19 when she got pregnant. They weren't married. She was very Catholic and saw, when she looked at, do we get married? She saw like a possible divorce happening. And, she didn't want me to do that. And so it was really like this very thoughtful decision on her part, which is really, really hard for me to accept, that that's what she wanted for me. Not that she didn't want me.
Yeah.
You have to kind of differentiate that, right?
Yeah. And it's, your birth mother loved you so much that she gave you away kind of line that I know a lot of adoptees get. That must just be so hard, because like, well, if you loved me that much, couldn't you have figured out a way? That just must make everything just hard. But wow, you're able to maintain a relationship with her, and it sounds like you talk about these tough things with her. That's really amazing.
Yeah. So I lived abroad for a really long time. And in 2012, I moved to Los Angeles, where I am now.
Okay.
And my birth family lives in Arizona.
Okay.
And so since making the move, because it's like an 8-hour drive to Tucson, and now both of my brothers are in Phoenix, so that's like 6 hours, we've been able to really get a lot closer. It's not just emails and, random phone conversations. It's more often phone conversations and texting and visits. We usually do Thanksgiving in Arizona. And my son was born in 2014. So, that's another layer of like family and things like that.
Yes. And do you get along with your brothers?
I do.
Are they cool people and they embrace you in the family? Or?
Yes. When I first met them, he was the older brother, but now he's the middle brother. He was 21.
Kind of messes up the birth order.
Yeah, I know, right? And he was very accepting of me.
Oh, that's great.
But actually got really upset with our parents because they didn't share that information.
Oh, because this was new when you found your parents.
They had never told them.
Your brothers didn't know. Oh, it's kind of like being a late discovery adoptee, but late discovery adopted sibling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I bet it feels like a betrayal. Like, well, maybe you could have told me that, because I've thought I was the oldest this whole time.
Yeah. And then my youngest brother, he was in high school.
Okay.
So, I feel like I got more integrated.
Okay.
Even though like in the very beginning, I wasn't really there that often. I was 26. I think right after we met, I moved to France on a fellowship. So, I wasn't very present.
Okay.
But, I feel like I kind of came in because I came in earlier for him.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's not always been perfect and just like a fairy tale or anything, but it sounds like you all have done a lot of work and are maintaining a relationship for all four parents and family members. It's really amazing. And I don't hear that story very often. So good job.
Yeah. Yeah. We are all doing the work. It
doesn't just come naturally just because you're related to someone that everything's just great, I suppose. There's a lot of complexities there.
Yeah, I spend a lot of my life, and even like through my art, just looking for belonging. And I think that's one of the reasons why I lived abroad for so long. If you're a foreigner, you don't belong. And that's okay, because that's your role as a foreigner. You're just not going to belong.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're kind of a wanderer for a while, or you still are maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. I lived in France for about a year. I lived in Barcelona twice. I lived in Chile.
Oh.
Again, fortunate that I was able to do that. A lot of it was just kind of like, I'll just go there and see what happens.
Wow.
I don't have any money, but I'll just make it work.
Wow. I'm broke here. I might as well be broke somewhere else. I understand that.
Where I don't speak the language, and that'll be great.
No, yeah. I imagine you learned Spanish living in Spain and Chile.
I learned Spanish when I moved to Barcelona.
Okay, very good.
I lived in an apartment where people didn't speak English and did an intensive course in the city. And
your husband, is he Spanish or Chilean or something else?
He's Chilean.
Oh, Chilean. You met him there?
Yeah. I went down to Chile as I was finishing my MFA. It was kind of like a adventure vacation / doing research for my thesis. So
yeah, I'm doing research. Right.
research and finding a husband, apparently. I had no idea that's
Got
what my
your
research
MRS
was.
degree. Very good. Got your MFT and an MRS. Nice.
Right.
Now, were you always an artist? Where did this art therapy piece come from? Have you always expressed yourself through art, or did that come later?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I did a lot of art, but I had this idea of what art was supposed to be. Like you're supposed to do figurative things, or you're supposed to make drawings, or you're supposed to paint or whatever. So I did things like that. I was okay, nothing profound, but I had always wanted to be an architect. So right out of high school, I went to architecture school for 2 years.
Okay, cool.
And the program I went to is based off of the Bauhaus. And so there, they incorporate art into their design.
That's very important.
Education.
Okay.
Yeah. So I found the dark rooms and never left. So after 2 years, I transferred to art school.
Okay. So the photography kind of got you in the door. Do you still do the kind of photography that requires a dark room, like a literal dark room?
No, I don't have access to a dark room.
Okay. Yeah. It's becoming more and more rare, right?
Yeah. And then my MFA is in electronic integrated arts. So I use the computer for a lot of different things.
Okay. There's a degree called electronic integrative arts. I love that. That's a real degree.
Yeah, it's an MFA. Like you can get an MFA, so a Master of Fine Arts, and then in like different things.
Wow.
And so that was my program.
Oh, that's really cool. And when you were going to get your art degree, were you aware of art therapy at that point, or was therapy in your brain at all?
No, therapy wasn't in my brain.
You got an MFA and then an MFT later.
Right.
You've got a lot of letters here. It's like alphabet soup.
Yeah, it is.
So you got the MFA, thought you were going to just be an artist, and you're very kind of creative and edgy a little bit and experimental, maybe. Would you consider yourself like that?
Yeah, my work is definitely pretty experimental. It's not usually straightforward, especially the video work that I do.
It's really cool stuff.
So I have an MFA. I thought I was going to do these large video installations with sensors and things like that, but I left making experimental documentaries.
Oh, okay.
And this was kind of the first time that with my thesis, You Are Not a Perpetual Tourist. It's a series of like 68 short videos in a book.
Wow.
That was the first time that I deliberately started to investigate the kind of emotions around my adoption and reunion.
Okay.
So looking at intimacy, looking at gesture and families. So the footage is of children, families in public spaces.
Oh, wow.
So on beaches and parks, on streets, just wherever it's like public access. So I just started to work really emotionally with the footage. So I take documentary footage, and then in the computer while I'm editing is where I kind of craft things. So I don't necessarily know what I'm going to make before I make it.
Okay. So you just get the raw footage, the raw materials, and then you put it together. I've watched another one of your video compilations of short videos with your son. I can't remember what that one's called, though. What's the title of that one?
It's called Nesting.
Nesting. Yes. It's like puts a magnifying glass on family, mothering, children, intimacy. It was really moving.
Oh, thank you.
And quite interesting. I've never seen anything like that before. So you have a really interesting eye and kind of a creative brain. I'm really into it. I love it.
Thank you.
And then when did you decide to go back and get an MFT, marriage and family therapy degree, and become an art therapist? How'd that happen?
So I started working on a project that's called Origin Stories, and it was a series of workshops. It was originally designed for adoptees and foster youth about imagining our own origin stories. Because I was, always knew that I was half Mexican, yet present as white. When I was a kid, I still had this fantasy of being like some Aztec princess or something like that.
Okay.
Sure. Like kids' brains go anywhere.
Yeah.
I also imagined I was an alien too, because, I was adopted. So who knows?
I've heard people feel like aliens.
But as an adopted kid, this could really be true because you really don't know who your birth parents are, and you have no idea what your lineage is, what your roots are, or anything like that. So, and at that time, I was commuting in LA. We commute a lot. So I was commuting for a long time, sitting in traffic, and didn't have a lot of time to work on my art, but I had that commute to and from work. And so I started creating an imagined oral history of this Aztec princess.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, technically she wasn't Aztec, but of this princess in Mexico.
Okay.
And so I talked with a lot of people about that, and somehow it kind of evolved into this workshop for other people.
Okay.
Right. So what are our histories? What are the histories that people don't ever talk about? What are the histories that you would like to have had? You know, what could have been? Because with adoptees, it's always like, what could have been? So I did these workshops in storytelling. And with the original workshop, I used tarot cards as inspiration cards, not as tarot. So there would be a presentation and somebody was invited to talk about their origins and how they use that creatively. And then the participants would create a story in groups using inspiration cards, and then they would create their own cards.
Oh, wow.
And then the cards they created were then scanned and created a new deck. So then the next workshop that I did, so the second workshop I did didn't use the tarot cards, right? It used the deck of cards that were created in the first workshop.
Wow.
And yeah, I ended up opening it up to like other marginalized communities. So it wasn't just adoptees and foster youth. So like immigrants, Chicano, Asian Americans, queer.
And this was before you started going back to school. This was just as an artist.
Correct. This was before I started going back to school, but this was kind of the first big community engagement project that I had done. Yeah. And this is the one where I questioned, am I helping or hurting? I taught for a long time, so I know how to facilitate things, but I actually don't know if this is healing. It's healing to me, but is it healing to other people? And what happens if somebody is super activated by doing this work? Like, I'm not equipped to hold that space.
Yeah, because you might pull off a Band-Aid and then somebody's gushing blood out everywhere. And you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because it can be a very sensitive topic. And if people haven't dealt with it in the past, something they do in art could definitely activate something. So then you were like, okay, well, I better go figure out how to help people. Is that what got you?
Sort of. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, if I want to continue doing this, I need to be trained. Okay. And I was like, oh, I already have a graduate degree. Do I really want to go back to school?
Yeah.
But there were some prereqs for the program that I eventually went to. And one of them was a psychology 101 course because, I have art degrees, so I never did psychology.
Okay.
So I did Psych 101 at a local community college. And I was like, oh, wow, this is great and interesting and amazing. And I forgot how wonderful learning is.
Oh, yeah.
So I finished up my prereqs and applied to school. It's a dual program that I did. So it's an MA in marital and family therapy with a specialization in clinical art therapy.
Nice.
And that was also a big thing for me. I was like, I could just go to school to be an MFT. Like I have an MFA, I'm an artist.
Right.
But I wanted that extra training to know if I was really doing this ethically. Yeah. And then also coming from art, I was like, I don't know if I can sit through just an academic class.
Yeah, I bet.
And the program I did was like, it was all through an art lens. We were making art in every class. So
Now, when you have clients, what does it look like? Are you sitting there coloring with crayons or painting or sculpting, or how often does art come into your therapy? What does it present like?
Well, I don't force anybody to do any art. Some clients are more receptive to it than others. And currently I'm still all virtual.
Okay.
I do need to say that I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. So I'm working under the license of Jeanette Yoff. So once I'm licensed, which will hopefully be in the spring, then I'll go out on my own and hopefully have a space.
So you're getting your hours right now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I'm getting my hours.
And Jeanette is an adoptee, former foster youth, I think, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. And she's been working with the community and also as a therapist for like over 20 years.
Yeah. She's very active in this space. I've seen her work all over the place. So it's great. That sounds really great. And what kind of, like if a person is willing to do art in the therapy, what do they do? Can you give me an example?
It depends. A lot of times in the beginning, I'll bring in more of a specific activity, right? Because that's easier for people to understand. We're going to do this activity. I'll give them 10 minutes to make it. Because it's all virtual, it's usually drawing.
Okay.
Some people have paints, but based on my training, you should really start with something that is easier to control.
Okay.
Because things that are harder to control can get frustrating, can be more emotive.
Yeah. Or they can be an obstacle to getting out what you need to get out.
Exactly.
Because your paint isn't going where you wanted it to go. I can imagine that.
Exactly. So like, markers, colored pencils, even just pencil or pen and paper. But then as we develop this therapeutic relationship and I get to understand their story and their struggles, then I often bring in things that are more spontaneous. We're working on an emotion, something comes up. Okay, well, let's go into that. Let's explore that visually, see what does that look like? What does that feel like? And I do a lot of somatic work too. So it's a lot of how does that feel in your body? What sensations are you noticing?
So you connect it to your body. So most therapy is a lot of talking, and your hands are just sitting there doing nothing. But in art, you get your hands moving. How does that help in therapy? Not even thinking about what they're creating, but just the actual moving of your body and moving your hands and things.
It's a way of processing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you come in specifically with an emotion or a memory,
okay,
and then you begin to draw that memory, you're processing in a different way. Just as when you speak, you're thinking and processing then verbally. Right. And then when you write it, if you're like writing the words, you're also thinking kind of more analytically about how you want to articulate it that way.
Okay.
But then when you're able to draw or paint or use clay or collage or really anything creative, then your body and your brain is doing another type of processing, and one that's nonverbal, one that can heal in kind of a bottom up kind of way.
That sounds amazing. And I know the power of art because I'm a musician. And so I know that power of getting out of your brain, getting more into your heart or your emotional space. Music and art are excellent tools for that because they don't use, singing kind of uses words, but instrumental music and art, there's usually not words involved, and it's beyond words. It's beyond what you can figure out in your frontal lobe. And so I think it's really effective.
Well, singing is also interesting because you're using your voice, right? So you're using words, but you're also using like how your voice is resonating.
Yes, it's very embodied. Singing out of all the instruments, singing literally is embodied. Your instrument is in your body. Do you ever collaborate with musicians in your art?
I haven't yet. Well, okay, I take that back, but the piece was never finished. I actually was collaborating with my birth father. My birth father is a symphony percussionist.
A percussionist? Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was the principal percussionist for the Tucson Symphony Orchestra for many years.
Oh, classical percussionist. Wow.
He did classical and then Latin jazz.
He did all of it. Wow. That is impressive. That is hard to do. And they cannot hide in the back of an orchestra like that. If you do that in the wrong spot, you're you're toast. Wow, that's very interesting. So do you think that's where you got your creativity from?
That's what I'd like to think.
Yeah.
But that's also like a part of my, wishing the things that didn't happen, being a creative individual and not growing up in a creative household.
Were you in an intellectual household or sports or what was there?
Just very pragmatic. Like my parents are very salt of the earth and they've always supported me going to art school and moving to different countries.
Yeah, I bet they're like, oh, there she goes again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, I love how you're using your creativity and it's helping you. And how many of your clients now are adoptees or in the adoption triad or constellation?
I would say about half.
Okay. So is that kind of where you want your focus to be? Is that your dream to have a whole client load of adoptees or?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I decided to go back to school and thinking about what are my options as a job afterwards, like what am I going to do? My goals are private practice where I specialize in adult adoptees.
Okay.
I'm willing to work with other clients. I have no problem doing that. There's a lot of overlap with different things.
Yeah, sure. The loss and the grief and all of that everyone deals with in one way or another, right? So
the trans community.
Do you work a lot in LGBTQ spaces?
I do. I find myself there, I guess, because I have a lot of friends that identify
in the art world.
Yeah, in those communities. And through the discussion with a really good friend of mine who identifies as non-binary, realized that there's actually a lot of overlap with this sense of not belonging for adoptees and not belonging for non-binary people.
Yeah, not feeling fully present in your body, I bet. That's interesting. Well, I'm sure you're a very big help for all of your clients and wherever they come from, whatever they're working on. Tell me about We Are Not Our Cruxes. This is your big project you're doing, and I want to know all about it.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. It's a full-on project. I think it's going to be bigger than the Origin Stories project that I did in 2017. It'll start with a series of events where I've invited panelists who are adoptees or have been through the foster care system, who are adults. And they're going to be artists, activists, mental health professionals, scholars. And the idea is that we meet for like an hour to an hour and a half. So the full event will be like 3 hours, but the first hour to an hour and a half will be a discussion with the panelists about their struggles. So the basis of We Are Not Our Cruxes is kind of looking to the 7 core issues in adoption, which was coined in the 80s by Sharon Roja. But to my understanding, it's never been empirically studied. So this project also has a research component to it.
Interesting.
So the panelists will discuss their struggles, what's been hard for them, what's even been great for them, you know, or what's been great and hard at the same time, with the guests who come either zooming in or in person to also take part in that discussion. And then there'll be an art-based healing activity afterwards.
Nice. And if you're online, you just do it at home?
If you're online, you do it at home. In order for the research component to work out, there's a survey.
Okay.
And then if you're online, you'll like take a picture of your piece and upload it.
Oh, nice.
And all of those will form a part of a online, multi-layered, interactive visualization of the artwork and the struggles and emotions and cruxes that people identify.
Oh, wow. That sounds very powerful.
Yeah, I hope so. And then like with the title, it's also meant to be kind of empowering, right? Like, okay, you know, these are our struggles and this is what we're continuing to struggle with, but here's where we are. And this isn't just all of who we are.
Yeah.
We also have strength and it's meant to be uplifting.
Yes. Yes. So like we are not our trauma, basically, right? Like we have trauma, but we are not our trauma. So kind of separating that out a little bit.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times as adoptees, while telling our trauma stories is important, I also want to create a space where it's not just the trauma story, right? It's also a lot of other things that make us who we are.
Yeah. That sounds like an amazing event. And I'm so lucky I live in Los Angeles. So I'm going to try. Well, actually, I should ask, is it only adoptees that can go, or is everyone allowed to go?
It's open to anyone.
Okay.
It's open to any adult. So it's intended to be for 18 plus.
So no little kids.
No little kids. This is not a child activity.
Okay.
And the people who will be asked to participate, and it'll be self-identified adoptees who will be asked to participate in the research will be adult adoptees or those who have been through the foster care system.
But anyone can go and observe, and we can make the art, but just...
You can still make art, yeah.
Our art won't show up in the thing because it's only the adoptees are going to be part of the research project afterwards.
Yeah, only the adoptee or former foster youth experience will be part of the research. But anyone, you know, and especially adoptive parents or prospective adoptive parents are absolutely invited to attend to learn more.
I think it could be very informative. I'm just imagining looking through the images that are created, and I bet it's going to be a little bit hard to see. I'm just going to guess. And I bet there's going to be a lot of amazing things and interesting things. And there's going to be a lot of pain there, I bet, though, that we need to see. Everybody needs to see.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what it is that we as adoptees and former foster youth kind of identify as part of our experience.
And I know your project is all about healing. So it's not just like about like dumping out all your trauma onto the table, right? It's about processing it. So I know you're so creative. I have no idea what you're going to do, but I imagine you're going to use these artistic tools to help people take that pain and shift it a little bit somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal, that it's not just pain, you know, and how can we use it to build community?
Yes.
And how can we use it to lift ourselves up?
Now I see your first We Are Not Our Cruxes event is on Saturday, November 18th, 2023, from noon to 3 up in LA and also online. I hope to be there with Joey. Now, if people want to be involved or want to support you, how can we do that?
You can come or share the events on social media. So I'll be sharing on my Instagram, which is at Nick R. Rad. So there's 2 R's in the middle there.
Okay.
For my middle name.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll be sharing there. I also have a space online. So I run a alternative project space out of my home, and then I shifted to online during COVID called acogedor, which means cozy in Spanish.
Oh, nice.
And I'll have all of the events listed there. So I created a bit.ly so you can see all the events. So it's bit.ly/We Are Not Our Cruxes all together.
Okay.
And so you can find out about the events, find out about the projects, sign up to learn more, or register for one of the events, either in person or online.
Nice. And how much is it going to cost?
Oh, it's free. And do you want to know why it's free?
Why is it free, Nicole?
Because I am a very proud and humbled recipient of the Creative Core Grant, which has been distributed by the California Arts Council, which is a state agency. And I received my grant through the Arts Council for Long Beach.
Oh, nice. They have a really powerful Arts Council there. Actually, I know about that Arts Council. That is amazing. So you're offering this for free because it sounds like something that people should pay money for. I guess somebody did pay money for through the grant, but that allows all of us to attend it for free. That is amazing. That is really amazing. So let everybody know, and literally worldwide, they could come online, right? If it's not in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I'm going to try to schedule them so that they can be open to different time zones.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll work.
And there'll be several events, right? Not just a one-time thing?
Yeah, there'll be a series. And there'll also be another adoptee art therapist who will be Zooming in to be available to support the people on Zoom during the art making.
Nice. Well, it sounds like an amazing thing. I am so impressed with you, and I have no idea how to go get grants, but I understand it's a laborious and painstaking process. So you must have stuck in there through whatever you had to do to get that. And the project sounds amazing. Is it something like if they go to that bit.ly, do you buy it or not buy it, but do you get a ticket or like a pass?
So when you go to the bit.ly on the page, the first post is just about the project. And then the posts below it will be the different events so you can sign up for them.
Okay.
And if you do the research, I am asking for your name just so that it'll never be published. Everything will be anonymous, but so that I can match artwork to surveys and also to know that if you've come to more than one of the events.
Okay. Good. And if people want to hire you as an art therapist, where would they go for that?
The best way is probably to go to my website, which is nickrrad.com.
Okay. I'll put that in the notes.
And you can sign up for another free thing, a free 15-minute phone consultation with me.
Nice. Just to see if you match and if you could help whatever people are dealing with. That's great. Well, I'll put all that in the notes. And so definitely go check out this We Are Not Our Cruxes event and make sure and keep Nicole in mind when you are looking for an art therapist or something. Maybe you just want to try something else. Like you've tried cognitive behavioral therapy or you've tried plain old regular therapy and you want to try something else. Look Nick up. And I think that sounds amazing. Well, I'm so glad you came here to let us all know about your work and this amazing project. Thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on and sharing about it. And I wish you all the best on the project. And I hope 1 million people come out for it and get healed and change the world.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Beth.
Yes. So make sure everybody go look up Nicole and her project. And while you're there, look up Unraveling Adoption. We have a website, unravelingadoption.com. I have a support group for free for adoptive parents. So if you're an adoptive or foster parent, come find Aptitude. I also do coaching, individual and group for adoptive parents. And we do have Patreon if you are interested in helping us keep this podcast commercial free. So patreon.com/unravelingadoption. So thank you again for joining us today, everybody. please share this episode with anyone you think could benefit from it. Help us grow and share this important information with everyone in the wide world. So thank you again. And Nick and I want you all to stay safe.